if you're watching this at home, you have a weird Uncle Fred, chances are he likes this fight. And I'm just like your weird Uncle Fred because I see this as a potential fight of the night candidate between Short Fuse, Ed Herman, and GM3 Gerald Meerschaert. Matt, we can break this fight down in a lot of different ways. We're going to spend a decent chunk of time on it. And for Ed Herman, he's a guy that came into the UFC off the Ultimate Fighter Season 3 at middleweight. He was a runner-up. He's taken on top competition, whether it was in the UFC, with Strikeforce, wherever he's been, he's taken on names. And even still, at 39 years old, he's having a resurgence. He's on a 2-fight win streak, finished Pat Cummins 2 fights ago, and had a respectable win over Hadis Ibrahimov in his last time out. And if we want to go back 3 fights to good old UFC Moncton from New Brunswick, Canada, he fought Jean Vellante in a fight that he lost by split. He won that fight. So if you look at it, Ed Herman's a guy that's been around for the longest time. Black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Lost the tip of his finger when he dropped a well casing on it. And it was one of the most disgusting accidents I've ever seen. And opposite him in the blue corner, you have Gerald Meerschaert, a guy that coaches with Roufusport. A guy who is great and very slick Jiu-Jitsu. And who's kind of gone through a bit of a roller coaster in the UFC. I mean, if we go back all the way to 2017, his, debut, I guess, was against Joe Gigliotti, if you look at it in 2016. Then he beats Ryan James in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. And then he loses to Thiago Santos. Then he has 2 wins over Eric Spicely and Oscar Piata. What do we get there? He loses Jack Hermanson. He loses to Kevin Holland. Beats Trevin Giles. Loses to Eric Anders. Beats Duran Wynn. And then loses to Ian Heinisch by finish. And that was back in June. So Gerald Meerschaert, again, it's been a rocky road for him so far in the UFC. He's beaten some decent names. He's lost to more credible names. And it's that recent knockout that kind of leaves me scratching my head. And it's a weird fight because Ed Herman, he was originally supposed to be taking on Da Un Jung. Now in steps Gerald Meerschaert, middleweight, this fight at light heavyweight. What do you make of this one?
So, good news for Ed Herman. Even though he does have a new opponent on pretty short notice, his game plan doesn't really change. Ed Herman is the just perfect example of he's an old guy, he's going to get his lunch, take it to work, come back home, and probably kick someone's butt while he does it. Because Ed Herman, he's just going to keep on going forward. That forward pressure he's really well known for. Pretty good volume for a guy of his age. I know we just saw last weekend a 44-year-old and a 38-year-old try their best, and it was kind of sad. But with Ed Herman, he still kind of fights in the same way that he used to. It's just you can definitely tell he slowed down a little bit. With Gerald Meerschaert, like you had mentioned, that knockout loss to Ian Heinisch wasn't long ago at all. And I was a guy who thought Joseph Benavidez came back a little bit too early against Davison Figueiredo, and he was away for almost 5-6 months before they had their rematch. Gerald Meerschaert got knocked out less than 2 months ago, and he's coming back. Now, I get it. Ed Herman's not this, crazy knockout threat, so you're probably safe, but still, it's never a good idea to get knocked out and then come back that quick. But Gerald Meerschaert, again, he's a guy who his game plan doesn't really change no matter who he's fighting. He's going to go out. He's kind of a volume guy, but not really. Kind of likes to wait for the fight to come to him. The thing that worries me about Gerald Meerschaert, though, he puts his back to the cage, and that's really Ed Herman's best position. In those clinch, like we saw with the Patrick Cummins TKO, when Patrick Cummins ducked to go for a level change, Ed Herman brought that knee up, cracked him really well, finished him, was able to on the ground afterwards. So Meerschaert's best positions, I don't think he'll really be able to take advantage of Ed Herman all that much in them. Now, if Meerschaert gets on top of Ed Herman, it's a different story. If he actually gets the takedown, can secure it, get into half guard, full mount, side control, somehow take Ed Herman's back, then yes, I can see Gerald Meerschaert very easily winning by submission. But the problem is, Ed Herman has pretty good takedown defense. He's a good enough striker that I don't think Meerschaert's going to give him a lot of trouble on the feet. The problem, Gerald Meerschaert's got that really nice straight left that could catch Ed Herman. He was able to catch Duran Wynn with it, so it's just something you got to think about. But I think this is going to be a good fight. Definitely not fight of the night, but I think it should be a pretty entertaining one. This is a fight for those really hardcore fans. Like, if you're watching our videos, then of course you're excited for this fight, because this is if they gave Craig matchmaking abilities for one day, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was just like, you know what, we're going to do Ed Herman versus Gerald Meerschaert. So it's going to be a good fight. I'm really excited for it, and I think Ed Herman's going to be able to pull off the upset. I know I'm probably going to be in the minority with that, but when you look at what Gerald Meerschaert does well, Ed Herman kind of counters all of it.
Matt wants to steal all my points. You make one point that's actually not all that true, so I'm going to break that one down. Because Ed Herman, for what it's worth, his takedown defense isn't anything spectacular. Like, we're not talking in the 70 or 80% range. We're into the 60s, so you have to worry. But the thing with Gerald Meerschaert and the guys that he's beat, we're talking about guys that started to slow down a bit. And I get it. His first win in the UFC and his second win, the Ryan James and the Gigliotti fight. All right, you can kind of consider those a wash, and they were a while ago. A guy like Eric Spicely finished him by body kick. All right, Oscar Piata is a guy that got tired. Trevin Giles is a guy that didn't look all that great. And again, he's on this card. We're going to be talking about him soon. Didn't look great in that fight. And Deron Winn, again, you're taking on a guy that's a wrestler. You can really kind of, capitalize on his weaknesses in terms of being a really good grappler, like Gerald Meerschaert is. With Ed Herman, this is where it gets funky fresh, because Gerald Meerschaert, minus 185 favorite. Ed Herman coming back at a plus 155. If you look over on Tapology, this is where I scratch my head. At a 639 votes, 83% going Meerschaert, 63% saying he's going to win by submission. So I had to do some deep dives. I really had to. Ed Herman, in his total submission losses, he had 1 in 2003. He had 2 in 2004. He had 1 in 2006 in the UFC against Jason McDonald. He had 1 in 2008 against Demian Maia, second round triangle. He had 1 in 2013 in Strikeforce against Jacare Souza by first round Kimura. So his last two, 2013, 2008, Jacare, Demian Maia. Gerald Meerschaert isn't prime Demian Maia or prime Jacare Souza. Really? And I don't think he's going to submit Ed Herman. And I wouldn't say I'm a stan, because I have to kind of look at this objectively. But I do enjoy a good Gerald Meerschaert performance. And I did say that this is one of my fight of the night, or my fight of the night in general. So I do hold these guys in high regard. It's really tough to try and submit Ed Herman. Again, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's a guy that trains out of the Pacific Northwest against some of the best guys. And yeah, they're in some of the lower weight classes. But the Brent Premises, Jake Smith that you saw with Bellator last week, Austin Vanderford, you're going to get a good idea there. But you have Fabio Scherner at the helm of your gym. That's a pretty good guy to train under and earn your belt. So I'm taking Ed Herman to win this fight. I think the pressure is going to be an issue. I think normally where Gerald Meerschaert can kind of capitalize, and you really do see it in his fights where the tide turns, and it's either for one guy or the other. I think it's going to turn in old Ed Herman's favor, and I think Short Fuse is going to get the win here.
So yeah, I just think Ed Herman's the much busier fighter out of these two. Gerald Meerschaert, when you watch his fights, he will go 10, 20, 30-second periods just without really throwing strikes, because he likes to wait for the fight to come to him and then make reads just based off what you're doing. But with Ed Herman, he's not going to give you that time, that breathing room to really make those reads. He's going to be clinching you up against cage, dirty boxing, disengaging, back to volume. Ed Herman's just always going to be in your face doing something at least. He's kind of like a light heavyweight Clay Guida, not with the wrestling, but just he's constantly throwing something at you in different looks. I agree with you. I think Ed Herman's going to be able to get done by decision.
Don't box yourself into a corner, Matt. You're not going to want to miss the rest of our predictions. Both going with Short Fuse, Ed Herman, and the underdog in this one. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.